Hello and welcome to welcome to what is the Guinness Pro14. Hi, I'm DrivingMaul, the guy. I'm not DrivingMaul. I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul. And thank you very much for joining me. So, overnight we have finally had confirmation as to what the Guinness Pro14 is going to look like. We got confirmation last week that the Cheetahs and the Kings would be joining what was the Pro 12 competition, and after being cut from Super Rugby, and now we've had confirmation as to what the whole the season is going to look like. They are still way late with announcing fixtures and things, but they are catching up, and they're doing so in an orderly manner, and they're actually communicating as well. So they've already said, look, we have a draft set of fixtures, but it needs to be agreed by the TV companies first, and then we'll let you all know. That will all be done by next week, and we'll let you all know what the fixtures are next week. So at least they are getting understanding that they need to be talking to people to let them know what's been going on now that everything is signed and legal, and they can actually talk about stuff, which is good. And as we talk about stuff, let's just remind you that I'm always up for a rugby chat, so please feel free to put comments down below. Always up, I say, for a good old chat. So how are they going to structure it? So they're going to structure it as 2 conferences of 7 teams, and they've learnt some lessons from Super Rugby's conference debacle in this. I think they've learnt 3 things. 1, you need even conferences, so we don't have conferences of 4 and 5 as we've seen in Super Rugby in the past. 2, they have done everything in their power to make these conferences as even as possible, so you don't have lopsided conferences and people suggesting that certain teams should be in finals at the expense of other teams because they're only there because of conference systems. So they've made sure about that. And finally, they've made sure that they get on the front foot with how they communicate it. We've had some nice videos coming out. We've had 3 or 4 articles coming out. I'm pretty sure they've talked to various people in the press and said, hey, here's what it's going to be. What do you think? How are you going to report it? Because the media on the whole has been positive to sort of equal about it. We've not had the mass hysteria of, oh, this is all wrong, that we've seen in pro rugby. So they have learnt some lessons from Super Rugby, and that is good to see. The other point they are very clear to make, and it's like in the second paragraph of the press releases, a long-term strategic agreement has been signed by both parties. So the other thing they're saying here is this is here to stay. This is not something we're just doing for one season and moving on. This is not an experiment. This is how things are going to be. And my understanding from reading various articles a while back was that the agreement was for something like 6 years. So that these 2 teams would be in the Pro 12. So that's a significant commitment by both sides towards this project. There are some big question marks left open about that, and we'll get onto those probably at the end. So 2 conferences of 7 teams, and it's going to be 2 Irish teams, 2 Welsh teams, a Scottish team, an Italian team, and a South African team in each one. And the first kind of piece that everyone that sort of jumps out of you is, why split these teams? Aren't you increasing travel? Aren't you getting rid of derbies? So no, not really, because what they're going to do is you play everyone home and away in your conference, adding up to 12 games. You then play all the other teams in the other conference once, so that's another 7 games up to 19. And then to make sure they have the derbies, which are the important thing, it's what people are most interested in. You get to play the other two countries, so the other 2 teams in your country for the Irish and Welsh teams to complete the set of derby matches, or in the case of Scotland, Italy, and South Africa, they'll actually have 3 derby matches. And they'll add an extra 2 games against their countrymen. So that is their how that's going to add up to. So that adds up to 21 games in a regular season. Previously it's been 22, and the way they're going to keep the season length exactly the same is they're going to have quarterfinals. So the top 2 teams out of each conference jump straight into have home semi-finals. Then I've gone totally blank off the top of my head. Second and third in each conference then play off in a quarter-final to make it into those semi-finals. So we're going to have a slightly longer playoffs or finals series there. So one of the other interesting things I think about this, so that's basically how it's all going to work. A couple of things that they've said around player welfare is that they want to have, is that when they do the trips to South Africa, if you've got 2 games in South Africa, they'll try and have both games on the same trips, have a little mini tour, and also that there'll be 5 days excluding travel between games to let players acclimatise and cope with the travel. So that does 2 things. 1, it's better for player welfare, and 2, it's better for competitive matches as well. So how competitive is this going to be? We're taking the 2 weakest teams, or 2 of the weakest teams in Super Rugby, and then putting them into the Pro 12. Is this going to be another 2 Italian teams being added that are just also rounds? And the answer to that one is I don't think so, no. The Cheetahs are the current Currie Cup champions. They are a franchise on the rise at the moment, which is a good time to be obviously for them to be moving into another competition. The Kings also are a new franchise, so it's taken a while to find their feet. They have had off-field issues around the administration, and hopefully those are stabilising. And the coach there has done a very good job, especially in the second half of this season, to get the team galvanised. Now, are they contenders for season 1? Probably not. These guys have already been playing since February this year, okay? And they're going to be playing continuously through till May next year. Now, they're going to have a few more buys, a few more weekends off, because they're not in the European competitions. Obviously, they're also not in the Anglo-Welsh competition either, so that's a few more weekends off. So they're going to have some rest time to cope with the extra travel that they're going to have ahead of everyone else. But still, we are talking about a season that runs from February all the way through to the following February and on to May. So so that's a 15-month season. That's just crazy without having a proper off-season. So we'll see how they cope with that. In the 2nd, 3rd, 4th season, that's much more likely that they'll acclimatise to it, and B, they'll have a proper season with off-season, and the players will have time to rest, which is good. The question mark then around these sides looking on is that quite a few of these players have mentioned, oh, fantastic, this is going to put us in the European shop window. I can go make some money. Now, hopefully that doesn't mean that they end up just being feeder clubs for Europe where the players get better exposure. Hopefully it means they get a bit more money and they can actually hold on to their players and grow. And we'll see how that works. I mean, only time will tell. Going back to the long-term view of this, one of the things I put in here is that the way that they're setting up the conferences is that if you took a table of how the teams finished last season, the top Irish side and the 4th Irish side will go into one conference, and the 2nd and 3rd will go into the other conference, joined by the top and the bottom Welsh sides, whilst the 2nd, 3rd Welsh sides will be back in Conference 1. And so this is the way they're doing it to keep the 2 conferences competitive. What they've said is that each year the conferences will be rejigged according to the previous year's results. So these aren't set conferences. They have the potential to change over time, which is one thing. The other thing they've said is if you have, because obviously if you're playing 21 regular season games, that means you have 10 or 11 home games and 10 or 11 away games. And they've said that teams, they will try and give teams that have 10 home games one season, 11 home games the following season. We'll have to see how that works out when you're shuffling the conferences. It doesn't make it that easy. The other question mark around this is, whilst they're talking about long-term strategic and this is our structure and you can see how it'll work in years going forwards, the big sort of gorilla in the room is the Americas, with talk of a team in the USA and a team in Canada joining the 2018-2019 season, and also talk of Germany and Georgia potentially adding teams as well. and how that will fit in and how that will work. Because if you add more teams in, again, the structure has to change to a greater or lesser degree. And we'll see how they manage to cope with all of that. So just because this is how it is this season, and they are talking in a very permanent way, doesn't mean we're going to have that permanence actually happening going forwards. But it is good to see them talking that way, not talking about it being temporary, because that obviously causes unrest, and people generally aren't great fans of that. So all in all, I think this has been handled so far well by the Pro14. They had to keep quiet during legal. As soon as the legal thing's been done, they've got out and they've been very positive and proactive about the message. Let's hope they keep doing that. I think one of the lessons from Super Rugby is you have to keep selling a new structure. People don't like change, so you're going to have to sell this to make sure that people stay positive about it. It'd be very easy for it to flip and people become very negative about this change again. So lots of positivity needs to be done there, and they need to get their comms right around that. Otherwise, it is looking towards being a good season. We'll see how the Kings and Cheetahs cope with their 15-month season, how all the other teams cope with going down to South Africa. Oh yeah, and that's the other point. One of the things that we've talked about with the global season is that one of the reasons it couldn't change, or one of the reasons that the Southern Hemisphere couldn't change to the Northern Hemisphere, was it was too hot because it was their summer. Well, we're going to see how hot it is, because this lands smack bang in their summer. Now, the Guinness Pro14 has put a positive spin on that, saying, hey, it'll be hard tracks down there. Oh yeah, it is going to be hard tracks, very hard. But it's also going to be very hot. Whether they cope, how that plays for player welfare, we'll have to see. And they've said that it's a good technical challenge as teams flip between hard tracks and the softer or even muddy tracks, if we think about some of the pictures that we had in Newport last season, and how teams cope with that. Well, yep, again, there is a technical side. There's also the health issue side, is that people, when you change from temperatures like that, it's easy to pick up colds and things as well from the players. So hopefully the medical teams are on top of that straight away. Thank you very much for joining me. Quick reminder to sign up for my newsletter. Link above on Twitter, down below on YouTube. I also gave out my Curry Cup predictions today, so please have a look out for those and enjoy the rugby, and let's look forward to seeing the Pro 14 fixtures when they come out.